Welcome, welcome.
Howdy, Becky.
I'm excited today. We're
Yep.
doing one of my favorite things today, which is going there.
Making people uncomfortable a little bit.
We are going to sit in the discomfort just a little bit today, and I really encourage you not to tune out because by virtue of enduring through this conversation, we are going to make the world a better and safer place.
Yeah.
And you have a role in that. So today we are so excited to welcome from Bend, Oregon, Jeff Keith, an incredible human being. He's the founder and CEO of Guardian Group, which is on a mission to disrupt sex trafficking networks in the U.S. and to protect America's children. And before we get into that, I just want to welcome Jeff to the show. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you for
today.
having me.
Hey.
So
Yes.
amazing to be here. Thank you.
Well, we are just really curious about this topic today. And, we try to be very unapologetic on our show about discussing issues that most people don't want to talk about. And for us, this is not something that we can look away from. Sex trafficking is, I don't think anybody knows how big of an issue it is because, again, we're not listening. But there is an important role that I think all of us have to play in this. And so this is just exciting for us because we are talking first to Jeff this week, and then later this week we're going to be hearing from his wife Shannon, who has a company that she has founded called Sudara, which is a certified B Corp. I'm so excited.
We love B
Oh my
Corps.
gosh, we aspire to be a B Corp. And so while Jeff is working to completely eradicate sex trafficking in the United States, she is taking those victims and she is putting them in a space where they can be vibrant, productive citizens. And it is such an amazing partnership that I'm so excited to hear about. So we're going to start with Jeff today. And he started this anti-trafficking work in 2004 when he was working with global anti-human trafficking organizations. And he was just researching best practices in the fight against human trafficking here in the United States. And then during his research, he recognized this opportunity to significantly reduce human trafficking by focusing on what we all talk about: education, training, directed networking, better resource coordination and innovation in the anti-trafficking technology. And through that, he founded this company. And I'm just so curious, Jeff, to hear the story of the Guardian Group and what you were doing before this and how you even came to found this company and be training law enforcement professionals and just average citizens like our listeners today.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, for me, it goes back into my 20s. So, um, I'm kind of a mutt when it comes to my career choices. I'm come from all over, and
We love
so
mutts.
I was. Oh man, I could not get into med school. I spent a whole bunch of time, and working in a hospital and some other things, and I couldn't get in. And so I had to relook at some things. I ended up joining up with the police and fire department. And I left that place I don't know. There was nothing against it whatsoever, but I joined the military. So I had a little law enforcement experience, little military experience. Came out of the military early from an injury, and then just started really looking at, who am I? And I got called into ministry. So I joined, I got into full-time ministry, became a pastor, and I started taking teams. One of the things I was responsible for was taking teams around the world to really hard places. To It's not like a vacation. Like, I really wanted us to make a difference wherever we went. And so one of the trips was in response to a tsunami. So remember back in, I think it was 2003, 2004, there's that big tsunami
In Thailand.
worldwide. And so India had gotten hit really hard. So we actually were going there to help with that, this systematic approach to helping. So immediate care, intermediate care, long-term care. But I also had a friend that had just come back a few weeks before, and he had had some experience in a red light district. He was trying to help out there. That's kind of really when I first heard about human trafficking. So he came back and he was really distraught because he couldn't do anything. And so part of our trip was to set up some opportunities for us to have some future ministry there. And one of the things we did was we planted a well right in the middle of this red light district. And when I say that, This red light district was right next to this river. So they drank from this river, they bathed in this river, there were pigs in this river. It was just nasty. So that's what their water source was. So if we came in and dropped in a well, it would change that whole community. So we did it right in the middle of the red light district, which is also in the middle of kind of nowhere in India. So, and it was thriving. And so we did that. We came out there. When we came out there to speak and talk to them and dedicate the well, me being the guy on the team, I was told, hey, you need to speak, but it was not the place for me to speak. I had my wife actually ask her if she would speak, and it hit us so hard to see these girls, because the average age over there was 9, 10 years old.
Oh
Oh my.
gosh.
And it just wrecked us. Like, what the heck? We didn't have kids at the time, but fast forward, now we have 3 kids, and so it wrecked us then. It would wreck us even more now. And so we from that trip, my wife quit her work, and she'll tell you more about her story, to pursue what does it really mean to help girls that have been caught and caught in trafficking. We also built this 50,000 square foot building for girls and women in India to help, and that was part of the church that I was part of. So that was big for this development of how human trafficking got into our lives. I still was a pastor at the time, and at the time I was also thinking about what it would mean to be, and if I say terms that if they don't make sense, just hit me up what that means.
We'll start waving our hands.
Stop.
Yes.
Yes.
The missional church. So that there was this idea of what does it mean to start a missional church doing things, and I related it to, I called it the green letter Bible. So many of us have a Bible. The red letters are what Jesus said. I said, what would it be like if we highlighted everything, and I did, of what Jesus did, and we did highlight it in green.
Wow.
So I said, let's start a church that was like that.
Wow.
Oh, I love that.
And
Why hasn't somebody
flipped.
done that?
And the red.
Well,
yeah.
what it did was it really got me in the heart too. Like, well, am I being missional? Am I doing what Jesus wants as well, not just what he says?
Wow.
Just as important. So, and that's when I really started, digging into, is trafficking happening? Yes. And I was looking at it in the States. So, we definitely, sometimes it's easier to do things overseas. You can do things and come back, tell the story. Nothing against that whatsoever. But even as a nation, we spend a lot of money on stopping trafficking overseas. But here in the States, it's still so new. It's still so shocking. It's one of those hidden crimes. It's one of those things that as you talk to people about it, people are shocked. Like, what do you mean that's happening here? You mean people are enslaved here in the United States? And then, so it's very much of a hidden crime. So as we talk to people, we have to realize that when we're talking with folks, how are they interacting with this? Is this the first time they've heard this? Some of your listeners will say, no, that's not happening here. Some of them like, yeah, it's happening here. So, and there's phases with that too. So I started looking at, is the problem happening here? Who's working on the problem? Who have we tasked to go after the problem here in the United States? A lot of that's law enforcement. You cannot go and do what you can do in other countries where the gloves may come off a little bit more. You can do some rescues overseas, because unfortunately overseas, you also have law enforcement involved in the problem. You have government involved in the problem. You may have a little bit of that here, but definitely not like overseas. And so here in the States, we do everything by, through, and with law enforcement. So when I started looking at this problem and seeing some of the best practices, who's working together, I had this vision, and it was clear as day. I really, the whole idea of a guardian, what does it mean to be a guardian, a protector? The idea and the vision was, I want to have an army of guardians around the United States, guardians that were in law enforcement, are in district attorneys' offices, teachers, parents, people that are funding works like what we do. And for 10 years now, it's been almost 10 years now, we've been doing that. We've been enabling, training, empowering law enforcement to go after those that are causing the problem, the traffickers, and also help rescue and recover victims. And it's been a 10-year journey, very challenging, but I'll tell you what, I hate to say this, but I love and hate my job. I hate that I love it because it's a horrible, horrible, crime. And, but I love it because, we're making a huge difference by getting people to join us and become that guardian, as, helping as if they were our own kids. Because if they were our own kids, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be on this interview with you guys. I'd be out there hunting down and finding. And we have that same personality, that same mentality, that will do whatever it takes to stop this, until all are free.
Goodness, wow. Jeff. I mean, I look at you as this founder that came and did this, and I picture you guys in India having these conversations, but for you to have the vision to come back and think about how giant the United States is and how hidden the problem is, to have the vision and wherewithal, honestly, to come back and even try to dig in is truly remarkable.
It is.
I wonder, I've seen some stats lately, especially we'll plug, the Guardian Group social media because it is such an educational platform in and of itself. But could you just give some context to the problem here, either stats or, stories about how bad is it in the U.S. right now?
And what do those victims look like? I mean, who is this woman or child? Or is it just women and children? Is that a common misconception? I don't know.
Yeah, and sorry if I sound like all over the place, because unfortunately this is such a complex 100%. Issue. Sure. We'll take 2 days with law enforcement training them. We'll also talk with folks for 15, 20 minutes. It's the fastest growing crime in the world right now. Fastest growing crime, second most lucrative in the world. That in and of itself, we should stop and okay, let's go do something about it. That should never happen. Right. We are enslaving people, and the enslavement of people becomes the fastest growing crime in the world. That's horrible. The average age of entry in the United States is 15 years old. That's another statistic. And we're really cautious about statistics, because one of the things that you can do is everyone gets all excited about the statistics, when in reality it's one person enslaved is way too many. Yeah. And then you almost get numbed out by the statistics, and people check out or they question the statistics. And so what we do is we're very cautious about that. So anything we put out, we have the best marketing director in the world, I think. She's amazing what she does. And what we do is above reproach anytime we talk numbers, anytime we talk statistics. And it's still, there was this statistic when I first kind of entered into this years back, that 100 to 300,000 youth were at risk of being sexually exploited. That's the tip of the iceberg.
And that's in the United States?
Yeah, and they're saying at risk. Well, what we see online is there's probably 100 to 300,000 at least in it, trafficking. So it's not just at risk. And so, I say that just because it's a problem. 80% of our victims here in the United States are U.S. citizens. So again, it's one of the things that we've realized is that how do we re-educate folks, or educate in the first place, what trafficking really is? I hate the word trafficking because it kind of messes with your mind. Well, does this have to do with vehicles? Is this, a road thing? Is it sometimes people think trafficking is between state lines? So it's just this misunderstanding of it's enslavement. And so anytime, the definition is that human trafficking involves force, fraud, or coercion to obtain some type of labor or commercial sex act, or if that person is under 18. So it's enslavement, and it's all about money. People want to make money, and unfortunately what they'll do is they'll sell a human life for that. When it comes to sex trafficking, which is our focus, we say, let's help stop sex trafficking. And there's labor trafficking, there's groups that are working on that. We're not about just advocacy or awareness. We really want to stop it. So I go back to, we're re-educating, because there is that need to re-educate folks on what is trafficking really like. One is so we can stop it, and two is so people can understand, hey, I see these indicators, and they, if it's a girl, if it's my daughter, or if I work in a hotel, I see somebody that has the same indicators. If I'm in law enforcement, or I'm just driving around the street. I've had multiple interactions just as a person seeing it, let alone as as my profession.
Wow. The thing that I value so much about what you're doing, Jeff, is that we love people who come into nonprofit work to eradicate the issue and put themselves out of business. And I love that your true north is that you really are trying to put yourself out of business and solve this problem, which is so worthy. And I think we talk about all the time that community is everything. But when we couch it, we were just talking about this before you got on, we think of the community as being this beautiful life force of goodness, of people who want to move to come into a space and make it better. But we have to also acknowledge that there are people that are using community in the worst possible way in this situation.
People will take advantage of whatever it is. The internet, there's good and there's bad. Social media, good and bad. I was just telling our kids, I feel bad for our kids because, they just turned 14 and they still don't have phones. So we're really cautious about that, but we're going to set them up for success, because I want to know that, those people that have taken advantage of and turned social media into a bad thing, they're not going to take advantage of my kids. And you bring that up because it's very true. And so one of the things we talk about is creating a good guy network to defeat the bad guy network.
Oh, when
we work, we talk about working ourselves out of a job and out of I hope we don't have this job in 10 years. I really do.
Me too.
Me too. Because one of the things, and in order to do that, we have to bring our best. We really didn't even start asking for money until we proved what we built works. So we have an offensive side and a defensive side. The defensive side is very much specialized training for hotels, healthcare, law enforcement, community. We started a task force here in Central Oregon, others throughout the country. So that's more of the defensive side. Our offensive side, and the reason I bring this up is because we're bringing the best to both sides. Offensive side, if we're going to proactively go after traffickers and help recover victims, we need the best of the best. So I pull back from my military days and some friendships that I have built to bring the best from the United States military, very specialized special operations people, intelligence from the community there, to come on board because they've been trained. We've poured so much money into their training. They're the best in the world. And then we employ them. So not only are we employing veterans, but we're employing the best of the best to go after a problem that deserves that.
This is the world, and this is in our backyard. I mean, for you to be in a mall and to have someone traffic within 5 minutes in the United States, I mean, we should not be turning off, this episode. We should not be turning away from this, because if we are, to me, then I'm a part of the problem,
Yeah, it's just one of those things that it's really hard to look at. But once you look and once you find out these indicators and once you find out about the problem, you can't not see it. You will see it. And then it's how do we help people to understand their involvement? Do you jump in, like if you see something, or actually you can cause a lot more harm if you do that. So how do people get involved? And so once we, and that's what we train on. If it's law enforcement, obvious, but like somebody in a hotel, if they see these indicators, so a girl who is dressed inappropriately for the weather, she comes in with just like literally a plastic bag with cash, She doesn't have any ID. She may be with somebody that she's calling daddy. Um, it's just off. And it's not just one indicator. Sometimes it's multiple. Sometimes you can find, just that one indicator is enough, like a tattoo. A lot of times they get branded. So they'll be branded with the guy's name, or there's different, and then that's what we're training law enforcement.
So dehumanizing.
Oh, it's horrible. And so if they see that, how do you interact with that? So as an employee of a hotel, you're definitely getting a hold of your management. Now, if it's an emergent situation, then it's different. If she's literally getting beat up there, you're calling 911, getting the police there right now. But how do we interact with that? It's because it is, it's an ugly, and this is just the top of the top level. I just want to for instance, we work around the United States. And so one of the groups we were working with, we had gotten called from the mom. She had called police. They weren't able to help out because her daughter was gone, but she was told that because her daughter wasn't gone for 72 hours, they couldn't help out. Ugh. And so they called us. And so we quickly, because we have partnerships, a lot of what we do is based on partnerships and trust. And so we got a hold of some folks that we work with, law enforcement, DAs. Hey, this is what's happening. And we, alongside law enforcement, were able to see that this guy was coming up to another state every day. I mean, not every day, every month, to get girls. And this girl, I think, was 16, would get girls and take the girls down, like literally throw a party, do some things, and then grab the girls and take them down to another state to sell them for sex every month. And so we found out within 24 hours where she was, got a hold of law enforcement in that other city. She was brought back to her mom within another 24 hours, which is, unheard of. Before that 72-hour window even, she was already being trafficked and stopped and brought back. And then that trafficker, when he came back the next month to get new girls, police were made aware of it. They already knew it, and they caught him and they put him in jail. And he was prosecuted for trafficking.
Oh my gosh! It's got to be a moment when you're like, this is why we do this, and this is what these 10 years of building partnerships and connections is all about, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's that's really what it's about. It's like, what's the impact if you're admiring the problem? We don't like to admire the problem. We want to see, are we having an impact? And if we're not, how do we change things so we do have that large impact?
Yeah. Well, I wonder, Jeff, just thinking about you guys, I still picture y'all coming back from India and saying, we're going to solve this problem. How do you build this network, and how do you get people to buy in and believe and create all these incredible partnerships with this unseen problem? And I think I'm trying to imagine me going and telling a policeman a gap in their service. And I can't imagine that would go well. So like, how do you do those? How do you have those conversations and build the trust over this time?
It's Gary Haugen. You guys ever hear of him?
No.
Gary
Tell us who Gary is.
One of those. He started a anti-trafficking group years back, and he had said something that I'm like, I'm glad I heard it back then. He had said that victims of oppression don't need our spasms of passion. They need our legs and lungs of endurance.
Okay, say it again. Okay, yeah. Say it again for everybody.
You know what? I think I even have it here. So, okay, I got it here. So the victims of injustice in our world do not need our spasms of passion. They need our long obedience in the same direction, our legs and lungs of endurance. And so I think it's very, very true when it comes to such a complex, hard issue like sex trafficking of minors. You're in the United States. You're not going to fix the problem overnight. And we, through the vision was part of it being, not only are we going to be very proactive, it was going to be based on partnerships, and partnerships are based on trust. And so how do you gain the trust of those that you're trying to to bring on board. And so it comes back to, you know, we're about servant leadership at Guardian Group. We are about, you don't care who gets the credit. So you'll get a lot more accomplished if you don't care who gets the credit. I'll tell you what, people see that. So when we started, we started here in Bend, Oregon, excuse me, and we said, what does it look like for us to build a team of the right people from these different organizations to work together? And the common thread was nobody's going to care who gets the credit. Nobody's going to, because you also don't care who gets the money, because you don't want to chase the money. If we're going to really create a group of people, works in the DA's office, law enforcement, teachers, healthcare, different groups, and we're going to be effective, then you got to come to the table with, like, these are some common threads that we have amongst us. Being, like I said, you don't care who gets the credit. And with that, we created this, you know, we started doing trainings. Guardian Group started doing trainings for these different groups to include law enforcement. They respect the folks that we bring from the community of special operations. So we do training, and everything we do for law enforcement is free. One of the things we realized at the beginning was that law enforcement they were time constrained. A lot of them didn't have training on human trafficking. So we become this force multiplier. So what takes us 4 hours to do would take them 20 hours. Mm-hmm. And so we started providing this free training, very specialized training, gain their respect. And then we said, hey, not only do we do this training, this defensive side, we do the offensive side. Well, tell us more about that. Well, we bring in folks, and we tell them about the folks that we bring in. And what we end up doing is we look for trafficking victims, and we look for them online, and we're very good at it. And what we do is we bring that information to law enforcement, where they can now go after, make a recovery, do a sting, go after a trafficker to arrest them, prosecute them. And we've got great success on that. And just this year, we started looking at this last year, before COVID, we started looking at what would it look like for us to really see the impact that we're making. We don't like tooting our own horns, and we can only see so much, but we started reaching out to some of our partners around the country to say, can you let us know, like, what impact are you making? We understand that you can't talk about some of the cases that we're working on because it's very sensitive, but can you just give us an understanding? Part of it was for our own team to see, like, hey, you know, we're doing a good thing here. The other part is it's good for donors who have really invested in us over the years to say, that was a strategic investment. It really was an investment. And this one DA, district attorney, had wrote us a letter, and I'll tell you the story. I'll read the story that he talks about. But he said over this 2-year period, they were able to recover and give assistance to 109 survivors.
Oh my
109.
gosh.
And then prosecuted, not just arrested, but prosecuted 30 traffickers. And he said more than half of those numbers are the direct result of Guardian Group. And that's just one of the groups that we work with. And so again, it's this idea, it goes back to that mission that we had from the beginning, is what does it look like to create an army of guardians and protectors? Because if we said at the end of the day, we were able to do this much, those numbers would be, you know, they'd be, I think, impressive. But, you know, it's that whole BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. What does that look like if we're going to go after not just 500, you know, recovering one victim is enough.
Yeah.
You know, that's amazing. But say 500. Now what if we added 4 zeros to that? You know, we said, hey, we really want to look at that number. And how are we going to get there? We're not going to get there from our team. We're going to get there through those partnerships and developing those partnerships.
And community, again, is everything. And I think the thing that I love so much about what you're saying and this concept of servant leadership and no one gets the credit is it is the exact antithesis of what the trafficker is doing. They want the credit. Mm-hmm. They want the money. They want the power. And so to me, turning that completely on its head allows you to come into this space in such a selfless and pure way. And as you were talking, it's just so funny that you said this and verbalized it, because I've been thinking it for probably 20 minutes, is if we only helped one person, that is still one daughter, one sister, one niece, one whatever, you know. But it's like, if you can find your impact, which has got to be so tough because so much of this has got to be confidential, that even helps your team, you know, battle that compassion fatigue that we talk about, you know, because they want to know that they're making a difference. We want to be able to tell our donors and our partners and that this is making a difference. So, I mean, I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but I'm going to share a little story because I want to illuminate that these things happen in our backyard. But my husband's an attorney, and he teaches a class to graduate students here in Oklahoma that are going to be social workers, and he teaches them how to navigate the legal world as a social worker. And he brought in a speaker one time who talked about sex trafficking and human trafficking here in our state of Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, I think Julie was doing some research. I mean, we're in the top 5 of trafficking states. And I can believe that because we have 2 huge transcontinental highways, you know, that run north and south and east and west. And his guest shared a story that we have an outlet mall that's kind of right there at I-40, which is the east-west highway. And this person talked about how we have these traffickers that come into that mall and they follow young girls around, and they will take pictures of young girls who are shopping, and they will text it to whoever the lead guy is and say, do you want this one? And they will find a way to get them into their car, and they will be out of the state of Oklahoma in 2 hours without anyone being aware. And I remember the day he came home and told me that story, and he was so shell-shocked by it, that it's happening here. And we have 2 young daughters, and the level of hypervigilance that we have, like, just from that awareness demands. And I mean, I think we have probably tons of parents who are listening right now, that we have got to be aware of what's happening in our own communities and how we can, I don't even want to say circumvent, because we don't want to work around it. We want to solve these problems. You know, we want to take your lead. And I would love for you to just talk about like how it is to be a parent and work in this space, because it had to have changed a little when you had your children.
Yeah, that's yeah, you're going to get the emotional side
Bring it
coming
on.
out of me a little bit. Yeah, it ruins you, because you can't, this isn't something you turn on and off. Like compassion, you don't just turn on and off. You don't, you know, being a parent, being that, the same mentality of being a parent is really what leads and guides Guardian Group, you know, as if, because we're driven by the one, you know, as if it were one person. But our mission and our values and our vision is for the many. So until all are free, that's one of our taglines that we came up with, because, you know, we'll work until we die for this. And so our kids see that. We are very, you know, we are protective. We want them to enjoy their life. But we're also like smart, you know, and because of that, we're able to bring that same knowledge and experience to other parents. So we put on and we have it on our website, and I think we put out there in social media too, just some tips for parenting. What are things that you need to be mindful of as you have kids, and that this is definitely an issue. You don't want to like freak everybody out, you know, when it comes to this. But on the other side, it's like you want to like give a little, it's just like the ocean, not just like, it's, I have a healthy fear of the ocean. You know, I love to surf, I love to swim, but I'll tell you what, you know, you fear it. And I think there needs to be a healthy fear of social media, those that aren't the greatest in our community. Our kids sometimes are blinded to, hey, everyone's fine. I'm just gonna go down to the mall and hang out. Well, I'll tell you what, I went to a friend's, his son passed away, and I was down at his funeral. This was down in Arizona a few years back. I was on a run. I stopped in the mall just to get something to eat. And when I just sat down, I saw three young girls, all, and this older gal, and the three young girls, and I again saw some indicators like, what? This is happening right now? What? Can I just get away from this? But you can't. They all had Victoria's Secret bags. These girls were 13, 14 years old. And I heard, so I was just like, wow, that's not normal. And then I heard her say, the older lady say, we didn't do this in Texas. We didn't do it in California. We're not going to do it here. So then I'm like, oh, another indicator. So I got up, left my food, walked out, took pictures, called the police. They were from another state. Sure enough, the police had stopped her, and the girls were trafficking victims. You know, you can't get away from it. And so it's one of those things that I do want our kids to know the reality of this, because they also get to be a part of the solution too. And I think as people, listeners here even, they get to be a part of the solution. Sometimes it's just listening and hearing and seeing the problem and doing something. Sometimes it's giving your life to it, like we have. It's not the expectation that everyone drops their job and goes after this, but do something. That's where we get it. We get to be a part of something. One of the quotes that I did have that I love this quote. It's from Pope Francis. He said, let us ask ourselves as individuals and as communities, whether we feel challenged when in our daily lives we meet or deal with persons who could be victims of human trafficking. Some of us close our eyes to this. Others, however, decide to do something about it. And it's just, let's do something about it. Let's not close our eyes to it anymore. Let's stop pretending that we live in a country that everybody has freedom. Not everyone does.
I'm so touched by that quote. I mean, some can close their eyes, and I have to believe that people who are listening and chose to click on the button to download this episode and lean in, I just want to thank you for being here. And I want to challenge you to open your eyes, be someone who opens your eyes, to be somebody that does something about the problems that you see in the world. When you see a problem, when you see a heartbreaking topic, don't feel sad. Sit in the sad. You can for a second. Go ahead. Sit in the sadness for a while, because it is totally heartbreaking. But we want to do something about it. So Jeff, what can we do? How can you equip our listeners and equip us with somebody who can do something about it?
Well, it's definitely, it's like you said, understand it. So I think one of the biggest things is being educated on this. So that way, you know what people know what they're talking about. Whether you're talking to a legislator in your state, whether you're talking to a hotel owner, hey, have you gotten this training? Have you thought about this? Whether you're talking to law enforcement or other parents, you have to understand at least the basics. And so we have free training online. So we have a basic 101 course. We have free law enforcement training. I think the first week we put it out to the community, to law enforcement. I think there are like 500 officers around the country sign up for it.
Wow.
There's a need for that. So people can be trained. And then you get comfortable. I hate saying the word comfortable. You become okay when you do see something. You don't freak out. You don't bury your head and you don't run. You're like, I'm going to do something. It's just like the looky-loos when it comes to a car crash on the freeway or, whatever. There's been multiple times I've stopped. I've got some experience with some medical stuff. And so either multiple times I stopped. Everyone's around. You think, hey, who's got this? Everyone's just standing around. Mm-hmm. And it's okay just to take the step and do something. And sometimes, like with medical, hey, the ABCs or these PQRSD, there's certain things that if you know that, you go to it in a time of an emergency or a time of a situation. So being trained, you could go back to that. Like, hey, I think I remember seeing this. So we've trained a lot of law enforcement, a lot of hotel employees, a lot of healthcare. Every time we do training, we get calls within a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. Hey, we saw these indicators. We made an arrest, or hey, we saw these indicators. This girl's in the ER right now. What do we do? People, once you have your eyes open to it, you definitely can actually be a part of it a little bit more. So that's a big part of it. Raising your voice. Some people are really good at just at talking. You all are. You do an amazing job at that. You get the voice for hard problems. You're able to talk about it in such a way that people can swallow that and understand it. Sometimes I could be a little, I don't know, too assertive, or
I was thinking inspiring.
Too inspiring.
You're too inspiring right now.
No, I just, if people ask me, if you go to a party and people ask you what you do, I lie a lot, just because it's like,
I don't want to have to go there.
Man, that's just Debbie Downer, But you guys are great at doing that, raising your voice, and you can't ever raise your voice too much. That's a huge part, and we need that. And then for us, we call it to become a guardian. Folks can become a guardian. They join in. We believe that, hey, when we believe in something, our finances follow. So whether it's, hey, $5 a month, we've got some major donors, whatever it is, it's just like, it allows us to join in, be a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. If we really are wanting to stop this and be a part of this, like we talked about, that the legs and lungs of endurance, we're in it for the long haul. So we know that that people are, we value people and their support, both financial and with their time, to the point where they become partners with us. They become part of our family. They become like, during COVID, we stopped asking for money. The first few weeks, we just said, we called everybody that was part of Guardian Group, just calling them to see how they're doing. Hey, there's nothing that we're asking for you. We just want to know, do you guys need anything from us? What can we do to help you?
Clapping.
You really do become that.
Good job.
I was going to ask you about philanthropy, because you were really specific to say that you didn't just go there asking for money before you knew that it worked. And I thought that was really powerful from a founder, because I know you probably always believed that this was going to be, working, but you waited for some of those results before you went and asked for money. Is there a story that stuck out as you've welcomed philanthropy into the fold to this mission, that maybe it took y'all further, or maybe it was just a connective moment that it just really sticks with you?
Or even a story of a powerful moment that your nonprofit has created that has stuck with you.
Yeah.
A story of a girl.
I've been people that have been super supportive since the beginning. But we started realizing that over the years, it goes back to what you're saying. What are the stories? People want to know the one. They don't want to know, there's 3 million, trafficking victims in the United States. Say that's the number. They don't want to know that, They want to know the one. What have you guys done? And they want to know the heart behind it. I was actually at a fundraiser in another state. I was at a hotel, and there was that night. It was after, we did this event. I was by myself in the hotel room, and I was laying back on my bed, and I had this vision, and it just changed everything about me, about how I viewed this problem, how I viewed a lot about, getting others involved in this problem too. It was this. I had this picture of this girl at the end of the bed, and it was a young girl, and she couldn't do anything. She was stuck. She was obviously like a victim of trafficking, and it ruined me that night. I couldn't sleep. And sorry.
Take your time.
I just, that whole thing was, all I could muster up was, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry I couldn't do more. And having that picture of really what the heart of Guardian Group is about. Yeah, we bring in special operations folks. We do a lot of this work, but knowing that there are girls out there and women out there that have come to the end of their rope, and all I could say is, I'm sorry, you know. And I remember thinking, I'm tired of saying I'm sorry. I'm tired of that.
Yes.
And so it changed. It helped us to think through things like, I'm done saying I'm sorry, and we're gonna do whatever it takes to get her out of there, out of that life. And so we've seen the successes of what has happened, getting others involved. What does that look like to really have that same mindset that there are women and children in that place being forced to do horrible things every night, multiple times a night, and they don't have anybody there to listen. They don't have anyone there to get them out. We're going to step up and do something. And so it's exciting for us to hear, and this is that story I'll tell you about real quick. This is from that district attorney that said, one such example includes a young woman who was trafficked by a dangerous offender with history of violence. The Guardian Group found her posting online and referred that information to our local sheriff's office to investigate. A successful mission allowed us to prosecute this trafficker and connect with the victim. But a short while after a grand jury issued an indictment, our victim disappeared. We heard through various sources that she was taken and moved to another state by another trafficker connected to our defendant. We feared for her life, but we cannot locate her whereabouts. My office reached out to the Guardian Group for help. Within 48 hours, the group found her in another state. Our law enforcement was able to connect with their counterparts down south to confirm her location and that she had a new trafficker who was much more violent, actually, than her previous one. We were able to bring her back and reunite her with her family. The Guardian Group found her not once, but twice, allowing us to rescue her from this life. Oh. That right there is like, that's why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. So if we start with that heart of why we do what we do, like I said, focused on as if it were one, but now we're seeing this happen throughout the country. Again, we don't take the credit for that. We share that credit. We share that encouragement with others. There are a lot of heroes around, and I just get to represent a lot of the heroes that are out there actually doing a lot of the good work.
You don't take the credit, but you can share in the joy of that moment.
Yes. Oh, totally.
And allowing people to live a vibrant and safe and loving life has got to be the greatest gift that we can give to another human being, which is what I love about this nonprofit so very much. And you keep saying the guardians, the protectors, and all I keep thinking, and I'm sorry I'm not trying to make light of this, is like, you are really the guardian angels of these girls. Like, they don't even know you're there, but you are in the background working and fighting and battling on their behalf. And to me, and again, I just think, like, even like what we think of angels is like someone who doesn't want credit, someone who's just there because they want to be there. And I commend you, Jeff, for your bravery, your grit, for going into the hard places, because we need people in this lifetime that are not afraid to take on what are such massive problems that you mentioned at the beginning, that numb us out, that seem too big, that we don't even know where to start, so we just don't even take a step. We kind of turn the other way, and we turn away from that.
It's going to take endurance. I applaud that, because
it's the long game, John. It's what we talk about all the time. So
if we made that the normal?
Right?
What if we made that the normal?
That's the kindness revolution, the impact uprising that we keep talking about. I can just see it here. So, I mean, that would be our challenge to everybody today. And our final question that we always ask our guests is, what is one good thing that you could offer to our community of do-gooders? A piece of advice, some counsel, a tip. I mean, surely I feel like we've gotten 2,000 good things today. I mean, you don't think they're good because of the topic, but they really are about infusing more goodness into the world and how we can be a light in this incredibly dark place. So what is one good thing that you would offer to our community?
I think there are some hidden other heroes, and those are the ones that fund groups like ours, like fund nonprofits that take the time or diligent about finding out, hey, this is a good nonprofit. Um, Guardian Group on that same note is that we're, I think, in the top 2.25% of nonprofits with GuideStar. GuideStar is a nonprofit rating. You guys probably are aware of them, because we have a scorecard and we say, this is, if we're successful, this is what it's going to look like, and they're metrics, and we post those. Not a lot of nonprofits do that because, unfortunately, you may not be doing what you're saying you're going to do.
Yep.
So and so I say that because as people invest their hard-earned income and money, and we can't take that lightly. So if somebody gives $5, we hold that in esteem just as we would somebody that gives $100,000, because it's the same principle. You have to be above reproach when it happens. And so those that are giving, whether it's $5, $100,000, $1,000,000 through a donor advised fund, whatever, all complex donation, giving and all that, they're the real heroes as well. Because you talk about a silent hero, one that gives the credit away. They're giving their funds away. Most of the people that I know don't even want to be acknowledged for that.